Hello everyone, my name is Sayyid Rahman. I am Rehan Wala School Foundation level student. So today my topic is wood the backbone of early civilization. So my first question is what is wood?
Hi, it's great to have you back. I love that topic. Wood really is the backbone of early, society. To answer your first question, wood is a hard, fibrous, structural tissue found in the stems and roots of trees and other woody plants. Basically, it's the organic material that let early humans build everything from shelter to tools. Do you have a more specific angle you're looking at for your presentation?
Okay.
I'm ready
Why?
when you are.
Uh, my
What's the
next
next question on your list?
my next question
I'm all
is
ears.
why was wood important in early civilization?
It was basically the Swiss Army knife of the ancient world. It gave people everything they needed: fuel for fire, sturdy frames for houses, and the material for the first real tools and weapons. Without it, early humans would have struggled to stay warm or protect themselves. I wonder if you're planning to talk about how it changed the way they lived in one specific area.
How did ancient people use wood for shelter?
I'm not quite following you there. Do you want to try asking that again?
What types of trees provide a wood in incident times?
Let me look into the specifics. It's wild to think about how they just had to use whatever was closest to them, depending on where they lived. In Egypt, they use things like acacia and sycamore fig, while in China, pine and fir were the go-to for construction. Even in the Indus Valley, they leaned on deodar and rosewood. It really shows how geography dictated their technology. Are you focusing your presentation on a specific region or keeping it global?
Okay. Why was wood
You're welcome.
considered a valuable resources?
Think of it as the gold of the natural world back then. It was valuable because it was versatile. It could be a source of heat, a way to build a home, or a tool for survival. Plus, in places where forests were sparse, like in Mesopotamia, having a steady supply of high quality wood like cedar was a huge power move. Does that make sense for the flow of your speech?
How did wood help humans survive at harsh weather?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble following that one. Could you try rephrasing it for me?
Uh, why was wood considered a no no? What tools were made from wood in early societies?
Oh, they made everything from basic things like spears and bows for hunting to heavier stuff like plows for farming and carts for moving things. Even the handles for their stone axes were wooden. I bet your audience would find it interesting that wood was basically the interface between their hands and the hard stone tools they used. Do you want to know about any specific kind of tool or maybe how they shape them?
Uh, how was wood used in farming?
It was a total game changer for food. They used it to make plows that could actually break through the soil, which let them grow way more food than before. They also built irrigation channels and fences to keep animals in one place. Really turned farming from a struggle into a system. Do you think you'll mention the plows in your presentation?
So why were wooden plows important?
Because they essentially unlocked the ability to feed a whole city. Before plows, people were basically just poking holes in the ground with sticks. The wooden plow allowed them to flip the soil, which brought fresh nutrients to the surface and made it much easier to plant seeds on a larger scale. It's the difference between a small garden and a massive farm. I'm curious if you're going to talk about how this led to more people living together in one place.
How did wood contribute to transportation?
It was the only way to move big things. They built the first wheels and axles out of wood, which led to carts and wagons. Before that, you were basically limited to what you could carry on your back. Wood made it possible to transport heavy harvests and trade goods over long distances. Do you want to dive into how the wheel changed everything?
Okay. What what kindness of boots were made from wood?
I'm not quite sure I follow. Are you asking about what kind of boats were made from wood or maybe something about
Yes, yes,
footwear?
yes, yes, yes.
Got it. Boats. Early humans built everything from simple dugout canoes, where they just hollowed out a single giant log, to massive ships made of planks for trading across the sea. Wood was the only thing that floated and was strong enough to handle the waves. Do you want to know about the different types of boats they used for fishing versus trading?
How did wooden wheels change human life?
That's a really interesting angle to take. It likely shifted a lot of the heavy lifting. With carts and wagons, the burden of transporting water, fuel, and food didn't have to be carried by hand as often, which probably freed up time and changed how they managed the household and the community. I wonder if you're thinking about how this changed the roles women had in early society.
Why was wood incidental from building home?
I think you mean essential,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It was the most logical choice because it was strong, easy to find, and kept people warm. You could frame it as the ultimate shelter material because it didn't just provide a roof over their heads, it actually insulated them from the wind and cold. Do you think you'll talk about the different types of homes they built?
Okay. How did I?
I'm ready when you are.
How did ancient Egyptians use wood?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble following that. Are you asking about how the ancient Egyptians used wood, or maybe
Yes,
something
yes, yes,
about
yes,
their
yes, yes,
resources?
yes, yes.
Since they lived in a desert, they didn't have a lot of high quality wood locally. They mainly used acacia and sycamore fig for basic stuff, but for the really big projects like royal ships or temples, they had to import cedar from Lebanon. It was basically a luxury item for them. Do you want to know why cedar was so prized?
Okay. What role did wood play in masculinization, masculinization
Wait,
civilization?
actually, I think you're asking about Mesopotamia, right?
Yes.
In that region, wood was even scarcer than in Egypt, so they mostly relied on date palms and tamarisk, which aren't great for big buildings. That's why they imported cedar from Lebanon for their temples and palaces. It was a huge status symbol. Do you think that fits into your backbone theme?
How did wood help trade and commerce?
I think you're asking about how wood helped create trade and commerce, right? It basically acted as the catalyst. Once they had wooden ships and wagons, they could move huge amounts of goods like grains, metals, and textiles over long distances and in much larger quantities than ever before. It turned local survival into a global economy. Do you want to know how this led to the rise of the first big trading cities?
Why were wooden cars important?
Because they were the first real way to scale up transport. Before carts, you were just limited to what you could carry or maybe drag. Wooden carts meant you could move an entire harvest or heavy building materials in one trip, which made building cities actually possible. Do you want to know about how the axle made them so much more effective?
Okay. How was wood used in making future furniture? To,
I think we've jumped way ahead in time. Computers are obviously made of silicon, metal, and plastic these days, but if you're talking about the very first calculating machines from hundreds of years ago, some of those were actually built with wooden gears and frames. Are you looking for the earliest mechanical computers, or did you mean something else?
what household items were commonly made of wood?
And basically everything in a person's daily life was wooden back then. Think about things like bowls, spoons, combs, and weaving looms for making clothes. Even the furniture, like simple stools and beds, was all wood. It's wild to think that for thousands of years, if it wasn't stone or bone, it was probably wood. Do you think your audience would be surprised by how many simple household items were wooden?
How did wood support to growth of cities?
It was the fuel that kept the whole machine running. Wood provided the structural support for larger, more permanent buildings and the fuel needed for smelting metals and cooking for thousands of people. Without it, you couldn't have the massive construction projects or the heating required to sustain a dense population in one place. Do you want to talk about how that shifted people from nomadic living to staying in one spot?
What was firewood important in ancient time?
Because it was their only way to survive the night. Fire was everything. It kept them warm in freezing temperatures, allowed them to cook food, to make it safer and easier to digest, and provided light when the sun went down. Plus, it was their primary defense against predators. Can you imagine trying to survive a winter without a steady supply of firewood?
How did wood help people cook food?
It was the fuel for the first kitchens. Firewood let them create a controlled heat source, which meant they could boil water, roast meat, and eventually develop pottery to cook stews. It transformed food from something you just ate raw or dried into something that was warm, flavorful, and a lot more nutritious. Do you think you'll talk about the difference between raw and cooked food in your presentation?
What role did wood play in heating homes?
I think you mean written records, right? Before paper as we know it, people used wooden tablets or slats of wood coated in wax to jot things down. They could write on the wax and then smooth it over to erase and start again, which made wood one of the first portable ways to store information. Want to know more about how those wax tablets worked?
How were wooden weapons used in warfare?
They weren't like a book with specific words in them, but rather tools for writing. Think of them as the ancient version of a tablet or a whiteboard. People would carve messages, lists, or letters into the wax using a stylus. So the words were whatever the person writing at the time needed to record. I wonder if you're
Yeah.
imagining a specific ancient language they used on these tablets.
Okay. Why
Like I
was
mentioned, the wax
and
tablets weren't
arrows often made from wood?
exactly. They'd use a wooden frame to hold the wax in place. So without the wood, the whole thing would have just been a puddle of wax. It really ties back to your theme of wood being the backbone of everything, doesn't it?
So, wha- what challenges did civilization face when wood become scarce?
I think you're asking about the challenges they faced when wood became scarce, right?
Yes.
When the forest started to disappear because everyone was cutting down trees for fuel and building. It created a huge crisis. It led to the first real environmental problems and even forced some civilizations to start trading over huge distances just to get more wood. It actually pushed them to find new materials like stone and brick for their homes. Do you want to know how that scarcity actually forced them to innovate?
Okay, how did people transport wood over long distance?
Since wood is so heavy, they had to get creative. For the really long hauls, they used the rivers and oceans. They'd lash giant logs together to make rafts or just float the timber downstream from the mountains to the cities. When they had to move it overland, that's where those wooden carts and oxen came in. It was a massive operation. I wonder if you'll mention how the search for wood actually drove people to explore new lands.
What are carpenters important in ancient societies?
They were the engineers of their time. Carpenters knew how to pick the right tree for the right job, like using a sturdy oak for a house frame, but something lighter for a tool. They were the ones who turned a raw log into something useful, like a ship or a plow. So they were basically the bridge between nature and technology. Do you think you'll mention the skill it took to build things without power tools?
How did wood contribute to shipbuilding?
It was the only way to conquer the ocean. Wood gave them the strength to build holes that could withstand the pressure of the water and the flexibility to handle the waves. They'd use resins and tars to seal the gaps between the planks to keep the water out, which allowed them to go from small river boats to massive vessels that could cross entire seas. Do you want to know about how the different types of wood affected how fast or stable a ship was?
What advantage did wooden ships provide?
Ships let people trade goods and ideas between cultures that had never even met before. They also provided a way to move large armies or settle new lands much faster than walking. Without those ships, civilizations would have stayed isolated. Do you think you'll talk about how ships help spread different religions or languages?
How did forest influence the development of civilization?
They were basically the blueprint for where cities were almost always settled near forests because they knew they had a guaranteed source of fuel, building material. It's also why some civilizations grew faster than others. If you had a lush forest nearby, you had a massive head start on everything from housing to weaponry. Do you think you'll touch on how the loss of those forests eventually forced people to change how they lived?
Okay. How did ancient cultures protect forests?
Actually, for the most part, they didn't. Early civilizations mostly viewed forests as endless resources to be used, so they just kept cutting until the trees were gone. However, some cultures did have sacred groves where cutting trees was forbidden for religious reasons, which accidentally acted as a form of conservation. Do you think your audience would find it surprising that ancient people didn't really think about saving the forests?
Okay. What religion or
It's a bit of
culture?
a wake up.
What religion or culture signing fence or did would have?
I'm not sure I caught that last part. Were you asking which religions or cultures had those sacred groves where they protected the trees?
Yes.
The Celts in Europe were huge on this, believing that certain forests were spiritual places where the gods lived. Some ancient Indian cultures also viewed specific trees, like the banyan or peepal, as sacred and protected them with a lot of respect. It's a neat contrast to the general trend of just cutting everything down for fuel. Do you think those spiritual beliefs are the only way people will ever protect nature?
How was wood used in art and discussion
It
decoration?
was a I think you're asking about how wood was used in art in decoration,
Yes.
right? Wood was one of the first materials people used to express themselves, from intricate carvings on royal thrones to small handheld figurines. They'd carve stories and symbols into wood to preserve their history or honor their gods, which turned a simple piece of timber into something with deep meaning. Do you think you'll show any examples of ancient wooden carvings in your presentation?
Okay, your final opinion of the wood.
Honestly, I think it's the unsung hero of human history. We spend so much time talking about the Stone Age or the Bronze Age, but wood was the actual glue that held everything together. It was the first thing that gave us a roof, the first thing that fed us through a plow, and the first thing that let us explore the ocean. Without it, we'd probably still be living in caves. I think your presentation is going to be a hit
Okay,
because you're showing
so
people
shut up.
that something so ordinary is actually what made civilization possible.
Okay, so bye bye everyone. Thank you for listening my my discussion, and okay, bye Pakistan Zindabad. Tata, bear, take care.